December
Thank
Monday
you.
nights on Māori TV.
Superb, Tamar Munch. Thank you. Honeyland on Māori Television on Demand. It's coming up to midday. We still await the outcome of National Party's Crisis Caucus meeting. A midday report special. We'll keep the news running for you and on RNZ throughout the day. Have a good afternoon. Ka kite anō.
RNZ National, no mai ki te purongo o te pautūtanga, ko Mani Dunlop aho. This is Midday Report for Thursday, November the 25th. Ko tēnei te purongo o te korekore arawia awhitia no. E haere ake nei, the National Party's internal ructions spill out into the public arena.
I don't think there could be a more destructive way to destroy the party inside out, undermining the caucus, undermining the board, 10 p.m. press releases. I don't think you could really have done that any worse.
The National Caucus has been meeting since 9 this morning. A media conference is expected soon. We will cross to it when it happens. In business news, the Reserve Bank finds serious failings at Westpac. And later in sport, the Black Caps stick with the same plan ahead of India Test match. But first, here's the news.
RNZ News at midday. Good afternoon, I'm Nicola Wright. Judith Collins' leadership of the National Party hangs in the balance as MPs remain locked in a caucus meeting sparked by last night's sudden demotion of Simon Bridges. He's been stripped of all portfolios over allegations of an inappropriate comment made 5 years ago at a party function to a fellow MP. MPs are still meeting with the possibility of a vote of no confidence in Ms Collins. She's expected to speak to news media afterwards, and we'll cross live when that happens. Mr Bridges spoke to media briefly before going into the special caucus meeting that began at 9 o'clock, labelling her desperate after last night's move.
I think it shows actually that she'll go to any length to hold on to the leadership of the National Party. There's a huge amount I want to say about what happened yesterday and how wrong it was, and I assure you I will, but I want to talk to my caucus first and be very clear with them about what I think and what I think should happen.
It's understood the offensive comment about sexual techniques.
Yeah, so look, we've already indicated that Auckland will start at red, and that's just by the very nature of the outbreak that we already have, the fact that we just want to make sure we're easing restrictions in a careful way so we don't see those numbers balloon out. Once we see the impact of the easing of restrictions, that'll give us a better sense of what we're able to do in terms of reducing them again.
But specifically, what you're saying, can we go for a few examples?
Yeah, and so look, it will matter for Auckland what is happening with the outbreak and the impact of eased restrictions on the outbreak's growth. What we also will consider is the pressure on our health system that includes both hospitalisations and whether they are manageable, and our ability to continue, as we have throughout this outbreak, to successfully contact trace and isolate and manage the outbreak by making sure that our health workforce is able to continue to contain it.
But there are many who say, based on the current pressure on the health system, we're better fitted in orange and stuff, so why not?
Yes, and look, we have said the starting point for Auckland is different, and that is because we have an outbreak where we've had, yes, the vaccines have an impact, but also restrictions. Now that we're easing them, we do need to see what impact that has on the growth of the outbreak.
Rapid antigen tests, we now know that they're going to be sold at pharmacies to the public on December 15th. How much are they going to cost each?
Oh, so look, some of that work, obviously, well in advance, people will be aware of, but that work continues as we continue to bring extra supply into the country. But obviously, rapid antigen testing is a lot cheaper than the current PCR testing that we're using through our community-based testing clinics.
I've been told by some businesses who buy them wholesale that they cost around $13 to $16
Yep.
each.
Yep.
Is that about right?
Yeah, so they are very low cost relative to what we've been using, which is what's called PCR testing. We still want to use PCR testing in our COVID response. That's because it is more accurate. So if you have a positive antigen test, we will still use a PCR to confirm you're a case.
If you know that's how much they cost to buy wholesale, then why can't you tell us how much they're going to be sold to the public?
Oh, look, simply I'm not part of the negotiations or indeed part of the price setting that will go through the pharmacies. That's obviously work that needs to be done with the pharmacies.
Will there be price setting made though? Will they be capped at a certain price?
again, this is work that the Ministry of Health is doing in the lead up to the 15th of December. It may well be that Dr. Verrill could have given you more detail on those arrangements. You've got a bright light.
There's now to say that borders are opening for international visitors in April. It was talked about it happening in stages. Can you say what those stages are?
Not at this stage. Look, where we absolutely wanted to give certainty is for, citizens, residents, those who are legally able to return to New Zealand now, but have been constrained because of the capacity of our managed isolation. And so now what we can give to them is that certainty that for those in Australia it's from January, for all others February, they will be able to self-isolate at home. We do want to ease carefully though, so we'll see the impact of those changes. We've indicatively said when we want to make the next ones, but as we see these changes made and the impact they have, we'll be able to, we hope, provide greater certainty for those other categories.
Those in tourism say they're already being inundated now with questions and queries that they don't know what to tell them. When can the tourism sector find out what those...
And I understand, and I absolutely understand, throughout this pandemic, one of the hardest things has been the ability to plan for businesses both domestically and those who rely on international travel. Our focus at the moment is getting the settings right domestically. We want to make sure that as we ease and change our international border settings, that we do it in such a way that it is careful and managed so that we don't have an increase in restrictions at home. So that's what we're carefully balancing. Oh, yes. Go ahead.
People are excited they're getting haircuts today. Hairdressers, salons and barbers are all back open. But what's your message to those businesses who you haven't let open today, watching those that are out?
Oh, look, for those, they also know the date that they'll be able to open, and that's the 3rd. And that's the 3rd of December. And we know that certainty for planning was important, particularly for those in hospitality, the ability to pre-order and make sure that they are ready. We'll also have the experience of those opening today around the use of the vaccine pass and the verification app, which will help us feed all of that into the way that we'll be operating in the future.
When Auckland opens up, are the spot checks from the police at the border going to be enough to mitigate the spread outside of Auckland? How confident are you?
Look, you can see already we have very tight controls for those departing Auckland right now. And even then we have seen cases move across that border. So yes, we are doing everything we can to slow that down by requiring Aucklanders to either be double vaccinated or be tested before they depart on the 15th of December. But one of the reasons we've made it that late is because A, more people around New Zealand will be vaccinated in preparation for any potential cases. And B, the COVID protection framework will be in place by then, and that offers far greater protections than what we have now by the level 2 arrangements.
From with regards to the complaint that's been made against private bridges, you're a senior member of that workplace with Big Parliament. How does that make you feel?
Look, ultimately I see all of this as being an internal issue for the National Party, and from my perspective, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And so my focus needs to be on managing that and not commenting on the ongoing leadership issues within the National Party.
You were once part of the party that was fractured and languishing in the polls. Do you have any advice for the National Party?
Oh, again, I think the most important lesson I've always had in politics is to always focus on the things that matter to the New Zealand public. And that means, for me, focusing on the pandemic, not being drawn into the contests of other political parties.
Leadership aside, complaints been made by a female MP. Is a female MP herself? Are female MPs in Parliament safe?
I actually don't see this as a matter at this stage for the Parliament. I see this as a matter for the National Party caucus to deal with. That means I'll be continuing to focus on the pandemic, and they can manage any leadership issues that they have.
From a sort of bit of criticism over the last couple of days about some fairly significant legislation being rushed through Parliament under urgency. Why do that under urgency?
Well, of course, the alternative is a situation where Auckland continues to be in a higher level of restrictions than is warranted. We need to transition into a new way of operating. This legislation enables that. It still has checks and balances. Most of what will be operationalised actually is drawn through orders which go through Select Committee, which is scrutinised and chaired by a member of the opposition, and still has a parliamentary process attached. So we are still making sure that whilst we need to move quickly to enable restrictions to be eased, we still have scrutiny as well.
So what do you say to those, because you're not just the opposition MPs here, but you're fairly well respected constitutional lawyers and professors, for example. What do you say to them, their concerns? It's fairly universal criticism.
Yeah, and what I would say is the exact same thing that our members of parliament have been reiterating. That within this pandemic, of course, it has meant that we've moved at pace, but we've retained scrutiny. The orders still go through Parliamentary Select Committee. They are scrutinised by the opposition, and we still maintain debate in the New Zealand Parliament on all of those changes. Were we not to have done what we've done, unfortunately, Auckland would face ongoing restrictions, and I don't think anyone would agree with that.
On isolation, some experts have come out today saying that they don't think the public health system is prepared enough to deal with that rising cases over summer that we're inevitably going to get. Is it prepared?
Yes, it is. Of course, we have gone through a transition where, of course, because we have vaccines, the vast majority of COVID cases will experience mild to moderate symptoms. And so we need to make sure that the system enables people to safely isolate at home because it will be safe for many to do so. So that is the system that's been designed. We've drawn on the best experience from overseas, but we will continue to use a hybrid model where people need greater care, they will absolutely get it.
What does safe isolation at home look and sound like?
Self-isolation means people having the right information they need and that their family need. Having good clinical assessments right at the beginning, so that your doctor, for instance, knowing your medical history, can help make a judgment about the best type of care that you need. Ongoing contact if you need it, and for instance, tools at home should you need it to keep an eye on any symptoms.
Will that ongoing contact be from a GP consistently though, or will that be from the public health system?
And so that depends very much on whether you're enrolled with a GP and also on the severity of your symptoms. But the most important thing is right up front, in those first 24 hours, when you have a diagnosis of COVID, that you get that clinical assessment so we can make sure we're meeting your needs. All right, last one.
Some fairly vocal voices from places like Tairā saying, please don't come here unless I'm vaccinated or not. What's your view on that? Would you go there?
So we would not be making the shift that we are were it not safe to do so. And my message to every part of the country is that actually the framework we're moving into on the 3rd of December offers greater protections than what we have been living under for the better part of going into 4 months. So that is a big shift, but it is a more protective framework than what we have now. The other point I'd make is we are a highly vaccinated country. First doses now, I believe we've hit 92% first doses now. That high vaccination rate does offer the ability to come into managing COVID with the best possible position that we could. Okay, thanks. You're going to be our last one.
Do you have anything to tell Aucklanders just to get them through this last little bit?
Yeah, and it is a last push for Auckland. And I hope they can see the changes that have occurred. Retail open, schools open, barbers and hairdressers, and on the 3rd of December, anything that's currently closed then opens. So really, for me, it's just a matter of saying thank you. When I look at what could have been, Aucklanders have made all the difference. They've got vaccinated, they stayed home, they have literally saved people's lives. Thanks, everyone.